a secret affair, and endless threats, and the unthinkable game of fear. What do you think happened at the end of this story? Irene Wagner is a young woman who belongs to the wealthy and respected circles of Vienna. Her marriage to Fritz Wagner, a successful lawyer, appears flawless from the outside. They live peacefully with their 2 children in a grand house, surrounded by luxury and social prestige. However, beneath this perfect facade, Irene feels trapped in monotony and emotional emptiness. The endless social events, superficial friendships, and the growing emotional distance between her and her husband push her into a state of inner turmoil. Seeking an escape from this dull existence, she embarks on a passionate affair with a young, handsome pianist named Eduard. This forbidden love brings excitement and vitality back into her life, but it also plants the seed of guilt deep within her. Irene tries to suppress her guilt and fear each time she meets Eduard, knowing that her perfect life would be destroyed if her secret were discovered. But the thrill of the affair keeps her coming back, until one fateful day when everything changes. As she leaves Eduard's apartment, she is confronted by a young woman who stops her cold. The woman claims to be Eduard's former lover and threatens to expose Irene's affair to her husband unless she is paid to keep silent. Her eyes burn with anger and vengeance as she demands money. In that terrifying moment, Irene feels her world collapse. Her reputation, her family, and her children's future are now at the mercy of this stranger's threats. Fear grips Irene's heart and refuses to let go. At first, she believes the only way out is to meet the woman's demands. She gives her money, even selling her jewelry to fulfill her demands, desperately trying to buy her silence. But instead of freeing herself from fear, this act only feeds it, making it grow stronger. The blackmailer returns repeatedly, each time demanding more money and issuing even harsher threats. It becomes clear that the woman takes pleasure in seeing Irene suffer, feeding off her growing terror. Over time, this fear completely disrupts Irene's daily life. Terrified that the blackmailer could appear before her at any moment, she becomes hesitant to even step outside. Every time the phone rings, the doorbell chimes, or someone calls her name, her heart races wildly. She wakes up from nightmares at night, trembling in terror in the darkness of her room, drenched in sweat. She doesn't feel safe even within her own home. Paranoia takes hold as she imagines the blackmailer secretly watching her or knocking on her door at any moment. Suspicion and fear consume her so much that she begins to imagine that even in her husband's gaze there is a hint that he suspects something, that he knows her secret. This fear clouds Irene's judgment and reason, pushing her into loneliness and helplessness. She begins to believe that everyone around her is watching her, that they know her secret, leading her to withdraw from social life. Even among her friends, she trembles with fear, perceiving even the most innocent question directed at her as a trap. As she becomes convinced that she has fallen into the blackmailer's snare and that she can never escape, she teeters on the brink of losing her sanity. Her fear grows so overwhelming that she loses all control over her life and becomes entirely dependent on the blackmailer. Despite giving more and more money, Irene realizes that the blackmailer's threats will never end. Faced with the woman's endless demands, she is forced to sell her jewelry and invents all sorts of lies to find money. She constantly makes excuses to her husband, and as the lies pile up, guilt and fear continue to eat away at her. She can no longer look Fritz in the eye because with every glance, she imagines that he has discovered the truth and is silently judging her. When Irene realizes that the situation has become unbearable, she begins to contemplate suicide as a last resort. She feels that life has become too agonizing to continue living with this fear. However, the thought of her children forces her to dismiss this idea from her mind. She decides that the only way out is to confess everything and free herself from this burden. Filled with immense fear and guilt, she stands before her husband and confesses her forbidden affair, the blackmail, and all the fears she has been living with. However, Fritz's reaction is completely different from what Irene expected. To her astonishment, her husband calmly tells her that he knew everything all along and that he forgives her without showing any anger or resentment. What is even more shocking is the revelation that the blackmailer was actually an actress hired by Fritz himself. He had orchestrated this cruel scheme to test Irene's loyalty and to make her confront her own guilt. The blackmailer, with her demands and threats, had forced Irene to face her conscience, driving her to the depths of fear and ultimately leading her to confess her mistake. Upon learning the truth, Irene is overwhelmed with a powerful mix of anger and shame. Her husband's cruel game had amplified her inner fears and guilt, pushing her to the very edge of her sanity. Yet, at the same time, this confrontation allows Irene to break free from her fears and liberate herself from the weight of her conscience. When the truth is revealed in all its starkness, Irene emerges fearless and strong. Their marriage is reshaped. No longer built on lies, they move forward as two people who have confronted the harsh honesty of reality